So far, we have learned how to navigate around SketchUp, use drawing tools to create shapes, and turn those shapes into 3D objects. In this video, we will learn how to apply this information to our North Boulder Library project. We are going to start by drawing the boundaries of our community space. Your teachers should have these dimensions. For the sake of this tutorial, I will be modeling ideas I have for the playground outside of the new library. I know that the dimensions for the playground are 33 feet by 70 feet. I think the easiest way for me to create a boundary for my playground is going to be with the rectangular shape tool. To make a rectangle that is exactly 33 feet by 70 feet, you can actually do so by simply typing the dimensions in. Have your rectangular shape tool equipped and click where you want to start your community space to be. After you have clicked only once, start typing in your dimensions. For me, this is 3, 3, apostrophe, comma, 7, 0, apostrophe. Architects use the apostrophe to denote a foot. In the bottom right, it should read 33 feet by 70 feet. Once typed in correctly, you should be able to press enter and a perfectly sized rectangle appears. To help me visualize the boundary of my playground a little bit better, I'm going to apply a texture to the surface of the rectangle. To do this, hover your mouse over the words default tray on the right side of your screen, and click the pin next to the X mark. This will keep it open. If at any point you exit out of the default tray completely, you can pull it back up by clicking Window, Default Tray, and Show Tray. Your default tray has a number of features that lets you customize the projects you work on. Click on the down drop arrow called Materials. Under the down drop here are the categories for different materials you can apply to surfaces. I want my playground area to be grassy, so I will find the Landscaping tab and find a grass-looking material. Click on the one I want. And then I'm going to hover the paint bucket over the surface that I want to apply it to. And click. Now I have a grassy field and the appropriate dimensions of my playground, the perfect start to my project. If you are creating a plaza or other community space, you would follow the same process, only using their dimensions and a material that makes sense for it. At the end of my playground, I want a sandy section for a swing set and maybe some seating for parents. To do this, I will go back into top view and draw out an area the size that I want using the rectangle tool. I want my sandy section to have a little border around it, so I'll draw another rectangle a little inwards and change the material to a darker one. Now let's go back to the inside portion and change it to sand. Now if we lift the area I created for my border, that you will see a little sandy area for my future swing set. The next item on my list that I know that I want to have as a part of my Nobo Library playground is a big water area. So back in top view, I'm going to draw out what I want that to look like. You'll see here that I'm using a pencil tool, but you could also use the other shape tools or the arc tools to do this. And again, this is usually easier to do from the top view, but it can be done from a perspective view as well. I'm going to change the elevation so that it's slightly below the rest of the playground. And I'm also going to add a little step at the end here to make it easier to get in and out. Great, so I also want a few blocks scattered around the water area that people can step on, so I'm going to make these out of the circle tool, and I'm just going to sort of draw these out. And I'm going to use the push-pull tool to make them 3D. I want to try to make these a little bit more colorful and inviting, so I'm going to go over to the color section in my materials panel and change the color of the blocks to a whole bunch of different colors. And then finally, I'm going to head back over to the materials panel and look for something that resembles water. Let's go back into the water section down here and try a few out. And there we have it. The next thing I want my playground to have is some climbing structures. And I think it would be cool to have that interact with the water area we just finished up on. So to do this, I'm going to have to introduce a few new tools in SketchUp Concepts. But let's, however, start with the basic structure. I'm going to draw it out in the corner here. Using the rectangle tool, I will lay it out, and then navigate to the push-pull tool to turn it into a 3D object. Now I want this to look more like a climbing structure, so I'm going to change the texture from grass to something that's wooden. Do all the sides. And then to really make it look like it's actually something that you climb up on top of, I'm going to add the structure of the roof, just some posts up on top here, using the rectangle tool again. And then grabbing that push-pull tool once more to lift them up into posts. So once we have our posts up and our basic building block for the climbing structure, I'm going to go ahead and add some climbing rocks to the side. This is how the kids will be getting up to the top. And then to make it a little bit more clear that these are actually climbing rocks, I'm going to go ahead and change them to a bunch of different colors. Okay, great. So now we have one of our climbing structures done. Now I want the same thing on the other side as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy and paste what I just built and move it to the other side. Now to do this, you actually have to make this entire thing a component. So highlight the structure you just made, and then right-click and click Make Component. This can be a little finicky sometimes, so it might take you one or two attempts to actually make it work. Once it's playing along with us, you should see that the entire structure now has this blue outline. If we copy and paste it using Control-C and Control-V, boom, there we have it. We can go ahead and now paste this on the other side of our river or our little water area. And now we have two climbing structures, one on either side of the park. The last thing I want to do is actually make a little bridge between these climbing structures. And I'm going to do this very simply by, once again, getting the rectangle tool, drawing it out, and then using the push-pull tool to bring it along and connect it to the other structure. Finally, let's change this to wood to match the rest. And we're starting to have something that looks like a complete structure for our playground. We are almost done with our playground tutorial. I have a sandy area, a water area, and a climbing area. All components that I figured out I wanted from the research that I did. The last thing I want to do for my playground is add some components like seating, trees, and other structures that are too complex to build ourselves. Luckily for us, SketchUp has an incredible tool called the Warehouse. The warehouse has hundreds of pre-made components of things that take a lot of time to model. So let's look up trees. There's a whole bunch of tree options for us, but once we find one that we like, we're going to go ahead and click download and load it directly into our model. This tree appears, and we can copy and paste this as many times as we want around our playground. So I'm going to put maybe 3 or 4 trees in the area here. Great. Now the next thing I want is maybe a bridge that crosses over this river so people can get from one side to the other easier. So let's go back to the warehouse and type in bridge. This bridge here looks pretty good. Load directly into model. And then let's go ahead and try and place this down by the river. Looks like I missed a little bit, but let's go ahead and try again. There we have it. Great, so now that there's a bridge crossing over the river, people can get from one side to the other a little bit easier. Another thing I know that I wanted was that swing set for the sand area. So let's type in swing set. Let's import this one here. And we'll put it over here in the sandy area. Perfect. I like the look of that. So the last thing I think my playground needs is some seating. So I'm going to type in bench in the warehouse here. And find a nice looking bench that I like. You can obviously make these things yourself. And if there's a specific type of seating that you really want in your space, you will probably have to do so. But if you're looking for a generic bench like this, you can just go ahead and add it from the warehouse. I'm using the rotate tool to reposition these benches to face inward. Copy and paste a few more. And there we have it. We've built out all of our ideas in a 3D model in under 15 minutes. This will take you some time and experimentation, but you can always come back to this video for tips on how to model your community space.